It's recording, right?
Yeah, it's recording. Alright, what's up guys? I have with me joined today, really good friend of mine. This is probably one of the most smiley dudes you were ever going to meet in the medical school. I'll let him introduce himself, so if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
What's up guys? I'm Manoj Matthew. I'm also a first year medical student with Brian. Yeah.
He's the man, dog.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Okay, to start this episode off, I had Manoj actually join me for this particular week. Week 7 was a very harsh week after we got destroyed by this one essay after week 6.
Let's eat! Oops!
So if you want to talk about that really quick, I'd like to touch upon that with you. What were the thoughts, emotions, feelings? I always like to touch upon this with everybody leading into week 7. After that very, very hard essay that we took.
I don't remember actual specifics about the essay, but I remember it was just kind of like a realizing point, just because week 7 is like the week before our exam week, where we had like an exam on Monday and then an exam on that Friday. So it was just kind of like scary not getting like the score I wanted on that essay, you know, just because this was like our last chance before all the exams come in. It was just scary for like a day or two, and you're like freaking out and stuff. I think it helped definitely like push harder in my studies. Definitely made me go over that material that I thought I had down, but I didn't, based off that essay. It was a good essay to have right before the exam because it like jump-started just studying. So yeah.
And then now that we kind of got the essay I want about, I'd like to go ahead and get your background, just so that there's people out there who are particularly interested in knowing a little bit more about you so they can relate. Just tell us a little bit about your background coming into medical school, where you came from, undergraduate degree, your path towards medicine, and why you wanted to pursue it.
So I guess my interest in medicine kind of started when I was in high school. When I was a sophomore, I started volunteering at like my local hospital, St. Rose in Las Vegas. At first I did it just to have something on my resume when I was applying to colleges and stuff. Not exactly sure that I wanted to do medicine at the time, but through volunteering, I realized that I really enjoyed human interaction and dealing with people like in a way that kind of helps comfort them and to like make them feel better. And I love the hospital setting. I love like the high energy, and I've always been interested like in human anatomy and science and stuff. So finding a career that involved like human interaction and science and working with a team and stuff, really like the only clear option was being a physician. And so yeah, I guess from there, that's when I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I graduated high school and I went to University of Nevada, Reno for my undergrad. I majored in biochemistry, which I liked it, but I think I was more inclined to be like a bio major. Like I just really liked learning about the human body, specifically anatomy and stuff. But biochem was still very helpful, very, very helpful to prepare for the MCAT, I would say. So I went through undergrad, and then my final year I applied to this medical school, University of Nevada, Reno's School of Medicine, and I got in. And so now I'm a first year here with Brian, and we're going through it.
So now that we're here, okay, so talking upon a topic of week 7, I'll kind of go through that with you guys just to give you a feel of what was going on. Week 7, we had case of the week revolving around, I believe it was a cancer case. I'll fix it if for some reason I'm wrong about that, but all of the lecture material that was going on that week was revolving all around cancer. What we learned specifically this week, starting Monday, actually was a bit different, but that's when we had our first anatomy lab, which I wish I could get footage of it, but it's a privacy thing, so I can't get that. Let's talk about the anatomy lab actually before we cut into everything else. So what did you think about the first anatomy lab?
Yeah, so I love the anatomy lab. In undergrad, I took anatomy, but I liked it so much, so I ended up becoming like a dissection assistant. So someone that helps prepare the body for like the next week's lecture, just isolate muscles, nerves, blood vessels. I loved it. I love like being in the human body and seeing all the little like intricacies. I think that's where like what really like I said earlier, jump started my like love for medicine or like becoming a doctor, because like the human body's cool, man. Like, you just see so much stuff going on. Like, just to have a human body like operate and stuff, it's just really cool and stuff. So like to see all of that again was really refreshing. It was especially refreshing because like all we've seen this whole time was just like the textbook, like biochemistry and pathways, practicing medicine with patients, but not
get tired.
Yeah,
it
can get very tiring. So yeah, it was definitely a good break to be in the lab and to like just work with fine instruments. I really like that part.
Back onto the topic of the lecture material. All it was essentially was, like I said before, on Monday, talked a little bit more about anatomy, but it was specifically anything just pertaining over to the chest wall. So, you know, learning, let me just easily put this, everything on the chest, okay? I won't go into details as far as what we learned there. Throughout the rest of the week though, we were still sticking to a little bit of our basic sciences. So for those who maybe came from a biology background, biochemistry background perhaps as well, we're still learning a little bit even about cell cycles. With cancer specifically, for those of you in undergrad, you guys are probably pretty familiar with that, right? Is that if something goes awry with the cell cycle, cancer is gonna go ahead and just roam free, if I can just put it in that simple terms. The lectures Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it wasn't as intensive as material. The only one that kind of like I think everyone was a little bit worried about was this one, remember, it was like a crap ton of like diseases that we had to memorize in this one.
Yeah, that was rough.
It was pertaining, I believe, to like tissue is mainly what it was. It was kind of touching back to what we learned in week 5 with histology, so connective tissue, epithelium, that sort of deal.
Are you talking about like the sarcoma, leiomyoma?
That would have been Monday. He actually makes a good point. We had a radiologist, as a matter of fact, kind of just explain to us a little bit more about cancer and what he's talking about, sarcomas, carcinomas. We learned more about that. And then kind of just touching back on case of the week. So can you recall what the case of the week actually was? It's okay if you can't.
Not really. It's kind of, I remember the lady's name was Rhonda Wilson. That's about it.
Yeah. So keep in mind, guys, once again, when we name off these names, these aren't real people. We're just using, standardized kind of names to relay a case, go along with lecture, that kind of thing. As you can see, it's been about 2 weeks out, and we really can't remember case of the week. So I mean, that's an honest perspective that we kind of get. But maybe the expectation is, we don't completely remember it, but if we were to look back at it, we kind of get ideas of what exactly is going on. And you can look back and be like, oh yeah, okay, I remember those test results, I remember those specific symptoms, those questions that they asked, and then if we kind of recall back to it, then the light bulb will go off once again. As you guys may well know too, every single week we're still doing POM, and that is an enjoyable part for some people. Some other people definitely prefer lecture. What do you think about POM in week 7 as far as like that cardiovascular 2 section that we were learning?
Personally, I love POM. It's an excuse to like get out of the classroom kind of thing.
Excuse.
Yeah. Honestly, just because like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love learning about, like the biochemistry and the hard science that we have to know as a doctor. But I also like being outside the classroom and being active. I like exercising like the aspect that we're gonna have to deal with patients as physicians. So POM is very liberating for me. I get to like hang out, not only with my group, but like also to like talk to each other, like what's the next like step in questioning for like the history and stuff like that. Like Brian said, this week we were learning the second cardiac procedure. So we were learning, I believe it was like feeling for PMI, right? Was it that one?
That was the first one. So it was actually where you went and felt like for carotids and
for pulses, right. We walked into the room, we had a standardized patient, and we learned about feeling for various pulses along the body. And I don't know, I just like being in POM because you're practicing like the actual skills that would be practical for you as a physician when you're first gaining like the patient history and stuff,
Lecture isn't practical, guys.
I mean, obviously it's all helpful. Obviously it's all helpful, but I feel like it's very necessary to like develop those skills now as a first year. You can know as much as you want, like book-wise, leading up to like your 4th year, which is like usually when med students like practice with patients and stuff. But if the fourth year is when you're first learning like how to deal with patients and how to take a history and how to communicate empathy to them, then I feel like you won't be able to relay that emotion as well as if you were to practice it as a first year. I just feel like it becomes way more second nature to you the earlier you started.
If I can touch upon that with you as well. Me personally, when I came into medical school, so I decided to start this journey 2 years ago, I would have never thought that by week 7 of medical school, that with this POM lecture, because keep in mind we only get like 2 or 3 hours with this thing once a week.
That's true.
I mean, I was very surprised as to how much I was actually picking up all of this stuff, and it's like I'm actually proud of myself now because I was walking through the ER shadowing. If my doctor's watching, dude, I felt like a dumbass when I was shadowing. But it's cool because now I feel like I'm actually pretty competent with this, and it's very surprising with how much progress I've made. So can you talk about your progress and how you felt coming into POM and how you feel now at week 7?
Starting medical school, I had no experience being in like a hospital environment. I shadowed like a surgeon once in his clinic, but that was like for like a week. I never scribed or anything like that, so I was very new to like the whole patient-physician interaction. When we first started, we had to like practice taking histories and stuff, and I was like super nervous. I was like fumbling over my words. Like I wasn't actually listening to the patient. I was just trying to make sure I got through all of our like acronyms, you know. But definitely now, like you have a more established sense of like what to say, how to react with the patient. Like I was saying, you have those acronyms memorized, so you're able to like go through, at least for me personally, like I'm actually able to like go through it as well as like listen to what actually like the patient is saying. I'm just happier that like I'm like more comfortable with the patient, you know? Because definitely like walking in for the first time, it's kind of intimidating. Keep in mind, these aren't like actual patients, right? But like it's still intimidating because you're like, oh man, I have to make sure like I'm asking the right questions, I don't forget anything important, you know? But yeah, nowadays it's still definitely nerve-wracking, but at least I'm able to get some steps down that I practiced way more before. And that touches on what I said earlier, like just repetition, and I'm like starting this earlier rather than much later. It helps get this down and make it like second nature for us.
I wish I could see this guy during POM, because I keep saying, like, look at the smile, man. This guy, I would say, would do an excellent job flying through POM, because as far as interpersonal relationships go, like this guy has it down. He's honestly been like, and anybody else watching this from our medical school will totally agree with me. You cannot be sad around Manoj. And it's true, man.
Thank you.
Surprise. But I mean, this is like I said, like the versatility of kind of what we're learning here is lecture. Some people will excel during that. I would imagine that Manoj will go ahead and fly during POM. It's still, you got to learn the procedures that every physician will need to be competent in when it comes to second year, third year, fourth year, as we continue to progress. It's just cool seeing the progress go along. I am so thankful that I actually am getting the material and I'm not behind on it. Like,
yeah.
Thank you to UNR, honestly, for actually somehow being able to teach me this stuff. Yeah, that's a surprise. If you can teach me something, it's incredible. So that was concluding case of the week, POM, lecture. Don't think I was forgetting anything else, but so now here's some questions for you to go ahead and for you to have an impact on the audience if you can. For anybody who's watching right now, if you had to tell them any crucial tips or advice for any undergraduates, anybody who's interested in medical school, what's like a crucial thing that you would have wanted yourself to know when you were in their shoes?
Ooh, I would probably say do something medically related that you're genuinely passionate about. In undergrad, I did research for about 2.5 years. It helped me like boost up my application for medical school, but to be honest, I did not really enjoy research. That was not my setting. You know, you're just kind of like isolated away from people and you're just like focusing on one project. Looking back at it, I would have loved to do like scribing or just way more shadowing opportunities or being like a medical assistant or even like working the front desk at a clinic. Personally for me, I love being around people and like getting that satisfaction of like being in a group. I never got that from research, and yeah, it did help me, but like it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I feel like as a result, like applying and like talking about it in interviews and stuff, it doesn't convey my passion to be a physician as much as if I actually did something that I wanted to do, you know? I definitely do something that you're passionate about. Your inner desire will be seen when they ask you about it, or when you have to write about it in your personal statement. Yeah, that's probably the best thing I can say.
Let us continue off of that question. So,
Okay.
if you were to die today, what would you tell yourself to firmly be proud of the fact that you sacrificed so much valuable time to pursue medicine?
Bro, this is such a deep question, man. Honestly, I would say like believe in what your past self expected medical school to be like and what my future profession will be like. I know we're definitely not like doctors yet, but like we got some exposure, you know, being like in the SOC, which is like our student run clinic. And honestly, like after being in a couple clinics, it really solidified that being a physician was the choice for me, because like I was dealing with the patients, I was learning about their problems, but not only understanding what they're saying, but also trying to help them out. And I loved every second of being in clinic. It wouldn't necessarily be like a saying I would tell my past self, but like if I could show them like my experience of being in SOC, I feel like that would validate it for me, because that's just like the most fun I've had in medical school. Like regarding like learning and becoming a doctor, that hands down the most fun I've had.
Now let's talk about regarding stresses.
Okay.
Week 7 was a very tough week. Even though we had 3 weeks of lectures, guys, before our second exam, that was a crap ton of material that we had to go over. If you could convey in any way emotionally as far as what you were feeling Friday night, just remember how much your brain was pounding. What can you say to them to really help them understand where you were coming from?
That Friday of week 7, it was honestly just very overwhelming, just because you're like, oh my god, I have an exam on Monday, and then I can't even like take a break from it because I have an exam on Friday. And so I think I got so stressed from that instead of like actively studying for it, I tried to do other stuff, or I would like take a nap or something, like just to avoid that, which would inevitably cause like more stress for me. That weekend was rough, and it sucked just because like you have those things like looming over you, and it's like something you can't avoid until you like get over it.
It's tough.
But I feel like it helps a lot knowing that you can like come to school like that Friday night, that Saturday, like all day Saturday and all day Sunday, all of the rooms were like filled out at the school. Everyone was studying, and it still sucks that like we had those things going on, but like it felt good knowing other people were there like studying with you, you know, like you weren't in this alone clearly. And it was good just like after an hour or like 2 hours of studying, you just go talk with someone, you know, like you'd go over material, you feel better about it, then just go back at it. It was definitely a stressful week. Thankfully it got to the point like by Sunday you're just like, okay, I can't learn any new material at this point, I'm just gonna go over stuff, and whatever happens. I was just happy knowing that I like tried my hardest and I did my best. So that was good. That was very rewarding. It was rough, but very rewarding weekend.
And he made it through.
Yeah.
We are here in Block 2 now.
Yes, we did. We survived.
Yes. Come to think of it, we're gonna take a step back. And it's gonna be something very little, but I think it's interesting for you guys to know about. Of course, physicians, it's not all just willy-nilly intelligent, I know cancer, blah, 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 right? We actually talked about biases. So we didn't have a lot of human behavior aspects for exam 2 coming week 5, 6, and 7. Wasn't until Thursday that we actually were introduced to that. If you haven't already, I mean, try to look up some research papers on biases, both from physicians, and I don't know if there necessarily was actually one from patients. I think it was more a physician bias.
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah.
That was an interesting perspective. You guys have you probably would be able to recall some of these studies that if you were to go ahead and look at them, you'd be like, oh, it's kind of obvious. But unfortunately, right, it is a problem. So having awareness about that should be a priority. I just wanted to go ahead and include that just in case if you guys wanted to know. As far as everything goes, that is gonna wrap up the information about week 7. We talked about case of the week, POM, learning about cardiovascular respiratory system. We had Manoj go ahead and express how he was feeling during during exam 2. Honestly, thank you for sharing that, and I hope hopefully you guys were able to gather something from that, just so you know, just to see how we're feeling towards the end of block 1. If you guys have any questions that you would like to shoot my way, or if you have any questions for Mr. Matthew over here, Mr. Smiley dude, just go ahead and message me, guys, and I'll get those right over to him. That wraps up week 7, guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope you really enjoyed this. See you guys later.